Check this out, a tale of 3 CDs. It's all happening.
Static selector.
Hip-hop recently celebrated the 20th anniversary of Rawkus' influential release Soundbombing Volume 1. The project featured Kool Keith, Black Star, Mos Def, Talib Kweli, High Tech, R.A. the Rugged Man, Company Flow, and then some, and then some, and then some. The Beat Miners DJ Evil D handled the mix. We covered this project in AFH's Last 7 2 weeks ago. Links in the description. Soundbombing is credited with starting an indie rap revolution. It was billed as the ultimate guide to underground hip-hop, which at the time was a relatively new thing, relatively new concept. Hip-hop itself had been underground, but having an underground sect within hip-hop was a relatively new thing back then. Ninth Wonder described its significance when he posted about the 20th anniversary of Soundbombing on IG. At a time where some of us felt in the mid-1990s that hip-hop was taking another direction, after the Big Bang in the summer of 1996 that made you choose a side between Stakes is High and Nas's It Was Written, when a lot of us sought refuge on internet websites for music to escape the redundancy of the radio, it was Soundbombing. Rawkus Records was the house I sought refuge in after the disaster of commercial success and the beginnings of people being programmed like zombies. If it wasn't for this album, the idea of making it in a commercialized business was a lost cause. This quote is fascinating to me. Let's break it down. Media was remixed completely in the mid-1990s with the passing of the Telecommunications Act of 1996. Now, this bill did a number of things, one of which it was the first Telecommunications Act to include the internet. It also allowed for consolidated radio station ownership, meaning fewer companies could own more radio outlets, which pushed a number of local acts off the radio. 1996 was also the year that Nas's second album, It Was Written, was released, as well as De La Soul's fourth album, Stakes is High. Released on July 2nd, 1996, It Was Written was Nas's commercial breakout. His debut album, Illmatic, had the world comparing Nas to Rakim, but It Was Written made him rich. Illmatic had no famous guest appearances at the time, just an unknown AZ. On the flip side, Lauryn Hill, Foxy Brown, Prodigy, Havoc, all lend rhymes to It Was Written. Illmatic was grimier, It Was Written was shinier, especially from a production standpoint. Ninth Wonder and I had a conversation about this week. Here's what he said. Roll the clip, Bach.
What Nas represented on It Was Written, the sound of it, that was Nas's commercial attempt. Like If I Rule the World was like his commercial single. Well, even on It Was Written, it was like one DJ Premier track and one Dr. Dre track and one track by Havoc. The rest of them, majority of the other ones were by Trackmasters, which was synonymous for making that sound, not necessarily all the way, quote unquote, leaving, the confines of boom bap or whatever, but still it was more shinier than it was with your classic DJ Premier track.
Nas's commercial attempt worked. To this day, It Was Written remains his top-selling album of all time. He also went mafioso on that project, embracing mafioso imagery, something else that was in stark contrast to Illmatic. Check out how Nas went platinum on DX. I made that video a couple years ago. If you want to get a deeper dive into this conversation, links in the description. De La Soul, on the other hand, was highly critical of gangster rap on Stakes is High. Released July 2nd, 1996, the exact same day as It Was Written, Stakes is High took aim directly at the commercialization of the culture and even intensified friction between them and Tupac and Tretch from Naughty by Nature. I broke that down on Tupac and De La Soul's Forgotten Rap Beef, link in the description. But in comparison to their previous releases, this was the first of their projects without Plug 4, Prince Paul. Common makes an appearance. It's the first time most of us hear Mos Def. What else, Ninth?
Jay Dilla did Stakes is High, so I mean, if you didn't know who Dilla was at that time, just know he did Running for Farside. If you didn't know who Dilla was, that was kind of people's introduction to Dilla as well. Well, JD at the time. If you weren't familiar with JD, that was kind of your introduction to that.
Now this part's compelling. Ninth pegs these two albums specifically as a splintering of hip-hop culture. Here you have two projects that are nearly exactly opposite in sound and subject matter, released on the same day in the same year as monumental legislation that allowed for massive consolidation in media and in radio while also reinforcing the internet. Ninth looks at these two projects as a fork in the road. It Was Written took you on one tangent, Stakes is High took you on another tangent. But for the first time, rap fans no longer lived on the same plane. Rather, separate communities formed. He explains it more.
So if you spent the rest of 1996 and beyond searching for this new beat maker by the name of JD, and then following Common's trajectory, and then most of that too, that led you straight to Soundbombing. Because now, not only you got these entities, now they are like environments created around for these entities to live. Okay, Player was an environment. Spit Kicker was an environment. But these environments is being created now. And when environments come fan bases.
It Was Written was on the opposite end of that spectrum. It felt right in line with everything popular in rap, a trend that Nas would continue throughout the rest of that decade. From the music video standpoint, Hype Williams was doing all the biggest, the grandest music videos, the Busta Rhymeses, the Missy Elliott's, the Bellies. Nas was in Belly, for example. That felt 180 degrees away from Black Star's Definition video. It looked like two completely different worlds, and that spilled over into venues and fan bases. Ninth.
So Soundbombing was this like red pill or blue pill that we took. One thing led us to another, like Los and Kweli and Pharaoh led us to Slum, led us to Dwele, this whole underground circuit of acts, which eventually led you to Little Brother. If I'm talking to somebody that I graduated from high school with, after 1996, our music conversation gets kind of tough because we weren't on the same plane. I took the red pill, so after 96, things are a blur. Of course, we know everything that happened on a commercial sense, but on an underground sense, for sites like Sandbox Automatic, HipHopSite.com, UndergroundHipHop.com, all of these sites start showing up. I'm fishing on all these sites while the rest of my friends were just listening to the radio and waiting for the video. So now you got this big gap or fork in the road between fan bases of the time when Hunte and Pooh and I was sitting in the cafeteria on the college campus, and everybody was listening to Black Rob's Whoa and was enjoying it. That didn't happen before. When the War Tour came on, all of us looked. When Cool Like That, My Single Planet came on, all of us looked. When They Hard to Tell came on, all of us looked. But then it became here's the underground. This is underground. This is what underground sounds like. And we didn't know what that was. And even from the standpoint of underground, I don't think necessarily we were liking the music because of the subject matter. Like, we didn't care. Like, we like Mobb Deep. Like Mobb Deep. About 50 people died on the Infamous. We weren't really concerned about what the subject matter or being conscious. It was the sound of the music we were concerned with. Anything that didn't represent bounce or crunk, Rawkus didn't represent it. Rawkus represented something else. It represented another sound. It just represented something else. With that came something different. So we needed something different.
The point is this: I was struck by Ninth's post about the 20th anniversary of Soundbombing for a number of different reasons. One, I remember that time period vividly. It's absolutely a seminal project. It's so specific. It pegs those two projects as the origins of a gulf within hip-hop culture. Rawkus wasn't the first indie label, but arguably it's the most influential, offering an alternative to the mainstream, which was becoming increasingly difficult to crack because of rampant music industry consolidation that still persists today. I don't think it's a stretch to say Rawkus acts like Company Flow brought more attention to Stone's Throw Records and Rhymesayers and Atmosphere and Slug and Idea and Abilities, which were all completely different from the Commons, the Mos Defs, the Talib Kweli's. The underground became super segmented as well. The indie rap revolution mentioned earlier about Soundbombing had officially begun. But one sentence in particular juts out like the Freedom Tower. Here's what he said: Rawkus Records was the house I sought refuge in after the disaster of commercial success. The disaster of commercial success and the beginning of people being programmed like zombies. I asked Ninth what he meant about that. Here's what he said.
When I say the disaster of commercialization, it's really the disaster of everybody being on the same page. Now the fan bases are fragmented now. That's what made it tough. That's what radio and find this new fan base that's been created by Rawkus and follow that. That's when the whole OK Player and Spit Kicker and all that came into effect to a thing. So some of us, again, did it by choice. Not because we wanted to be deep or be conscious. Our music sound doesn't fit this particular radio sound, so Rawkus got a fan base. Maybe we can tap into that.
Look, Ninth is the first to admit that the phrasing disaster of commercial success is all about perspective. While the music industry consolidated, the internet offered artists the opportunity to continue to expand their fan bases, to continue to generate revenue. So even if radio said that your song didn't fit or your sound wasn't conducive to what worked on radio or you didn't have the money to be able to buy a slot on radio, you still had a shot. That's tremendous upside potential. On the flip side though, our interconnectivity, our cultural awareness was sacrificed. It's much more difficult now, as just as then it became much more difficult for everybody to hear your song because we're all fragmented. We're all segmented. It's much easier to conquer the divided. Now it's wrapped on Still I Survive. Hip hop took it to billions. I knew we would. Nielsen told all this year that hip hop is the most popular genre in the world. Think about that. Radio and television still reach more people than streaming services, but every day Spotify, Apple Music, Tidal, increase in importance. In that sense, we're more fractured than ever. There are more echo chambers than ever before, splintering our cultural awareness in ways we haven't even seen yet. It makes it more difficult to reach the most people, to make the biggest difference. Is it possible to make a ton of money while still keeping culture intact? Has it ever been? I don't have the answers to these questions.
Status selector.
Another Saturday, it's all happening. Thank you guys for rocking with us each and every week. We appreciate it. I really just wanted to break down this one Instagram post this week. Great reason to talk about Soundbombing, Rawkus Records. I also wanted to give a shout out to Idea and all these incredible MCs that most of my friends and family who are not in the music industry, who are just straight up consumers, have absolutely never heard of. So I think it's really interesting to look at how divergent it was written and stakes as high were in that context. What do you guys think? What do you guys think about this theory or Ninth Wonder's assertion of how hip hop went? I think this is fascinating, so let us know in the comments section below. Amazon Prime rhymes ain't dope. Also, a lot of you guys have been asking about the Islam piece in Marginalized. That's coming up within the next 2 weeks. So look out for that. I also have another piece on Eminem I want to do around this project as soon as I get my ears on it. I can't wait for that. That's coming up as well. Like and subscribe to the channel. Follow @TheCompanyMan on everything. Make sure you hit that bell. It's all happening.
There were